I'm more than ready.
Cool. Hey everybody, how you doing? It's John Brewer here. What's brewing? And we are doing Brews with Brewer, but we're doing a special exception tonight or today. I've got Mr. Bob Higginbotham here, and we're doing ginger beer. Mr. Bob is probably, if you don't know Bob, then you don't get out much in Delray Beach. He's pretty much a fixture everywhere. He's been involved in some of the greatest restaurants and still involved in restaurants. And he was very public recently. How long are you going on now?
8.5 months.
8.5 months sober. And what I found so brave about what Bob did was he made it very public about what he was going through. So I thought we'd break this interview up basically into 3 sections. Basically how he got involved in the restaurant industry. As you guys know, I was in the restaurant industry. And what gets us involved, I always think, is a kind of interesting story. Then we're going to get into his sobriety a little bit. And then because he is involved in some really cool projects that are going on in Delray, we're going to talk about what he thinks the future of restaurants and I guess entertainment and food and beverage, what's going on in Delray. So we'll get into that as well. So thanks a lot for meeting me.
Pleasure.
Absolutely.
Glad to be here.
Appreciate it. So what got you into the restaurant business?
I was got into the restaurant business by accident, actually. Growing up, I was a musician. And I went to college for music. And one day, I decided I didn't want to play music anymore.
Really?
So I dropped out of college, moved home, and told my mother. I said, Mom, I was real nervous about this conversation. I said, Mom, I don't want to play music anymore, so I'm not going to go back to school next semester. And surprisingly, she took it really well. She says, oh, okay, that's fine, honey. She said, but if you're going to live in my house, you need to work 40 hours a week. She goes, I don't care what you do. She said, you can pick up trash, work at the ice cream stand, deliver newspapers, whatever it is, but you need to work 40 honest hours a week. And she said, and I'm not going to charge you rent. She said, but so you can save your money, and then when you save enough money, you can get yourself an apartment because you're an adult now and you shouldn't live at home with your mother. I said, whoa, okay. But I'm an only child. I didn't believe her. I didn't think Mom was going to kick me out. So anyway, she made it very clear. I won't get into it, but she made it very clear over the next week that I needed to get a job. So I took a variety of silly jobs. I worked at a tuxedo shop once. I stayed for a week.
Is this in Florida?
No, it's in Providence, in Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I took a couple other jobs, and I stayed a week, and I didn't like it. And she finally convinced me to take a job at TGI Fridays. I was really nervous about it because I was dating a girl that lived in Boston, and I realized working in a restaurant, they'd probably want me to work weekends, and that was my only time that I could go up to Boston to see my ex-girlfriend. And anyways, my mother eventually convinced me. She said, do it for a month. She said, if you don't like it, she said, you can start looking for another job. And you can, if you get another job, you can quit. So I said, okay. So I ended up starting work at Fridays. My training got cut abruptly short. I trained about half the time I was supposed to. I got thrown right into the fire. And I quickly realized that after working a Friday night and making, I don't know, $250, $260. Right. And screwing everything up, mind you, too, because I just didn't know what the hell I was doing. I still don't think I do, but that I was like, wow, I can make more in like 4 hours, mess everything up than I could working 40 hours at the tuxedo shop. So I was like, I like this.
Right. I think that's what gets a lot of people, and I know that's what got me involved too. When I was bussing tables, like you said, I can go work at merry-go-round and try to sell clothes and make whatever an hour, or I can wait tables for 6 hours and walk out with $1.50, $200 sometimes. The money usually gets people going when you're younger.
It was, and that was the initial hook. It was the money. And I was irresponsible when I was younger, so I'd make the money, then I'd go spend it all, and then I would come back the next day and I could just make it back. So that was the initial hook for me. But after a period of time, I got kind of good at what I was doing, and I became fascinated by food and beverage, and and nothing against Fridays, because there's a lot of good things that Fridays does. But you're not going to learn a whole lot about food and beverage there, especially not enough to cure my fascination that I had with it. So I ended up starting to look for another job, and I found a job at a place called Cafe Paragon, and it was right in the middle of Brown University. Very busy, bustling European cafe, and I started off as a server there. And after a year, most of the kids I would work there with were students, and I was a student. Well, I should have been a student, but I had dropped out of school, so I could work all the time, and I was reliable, and so after about a year or so, the manager was leaving. The owner was opening up another restaurant. He asked me to become an assistant manager. So I jumped at the opportunity. I wasn't even old enough to drink in this place, but I was now the assistant manager of a restaurant that was doing in excess of $5 million a year business.
Wow.
And I seized the opportunity. The general manager left. The owner had some personal issues, so I kind of stepped into the general manager's role, really by just picking up some of the pieces that he left behind.
Right.
So I learned how to do payroll. I learned how to do ordering. I learned how to do scheduling. All trial by fire. I screwed them all up every single time. I get screamed at on a daily basis. But being a sucker for punishment, I kept coming back for more every day. And I stuck it out 4.5 years, John. And I became very close with the owner. And then we became business partners in another restaurant in Providence.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And that's, in a very roundabout way, how I get started in the restaurant.
Now, is that one of those kind of deals where they give you points or something like that? Because I know that's always the big incentive with restaurant people. When you move into management, it's always, well, if you come and be partner with me in this restaurant, it gives them a chance to walk away, and they usually cut you in on the profits or, give you
So I became
like
a partner. It was myself, the guy that used to be my boss, Mario, and then a real estate attorney in Providence. So 3 of us were partners. I got cut in on a little percentage for the sweat equity, I suppose. Yeah. But I put some of my own money that I had earned while managing this other restaurant for 4.5 years into it. So I had some equity into it. I had the sweat equity into it. And then after a year, me and the real estate attorney bought out my former boss.
Wow.
We kept it for 4 or 5 years. It's still there now.
Is it really?
Yeah. We sold it to a restaurateur in Providence, this guy named Fred Goodwin. And unfortunately, Fred just passed away from cancer in the last 2 months. So I'm not sure what the hell's going on now. It's still there. It's still up and running. But that was kind of my restaurant history in Rhode Island.
And then what brought you to Florida?
Well, I moved shortly thereafter. And I did some work in D.C. I did some work in Connecticut. And then, and I had been to Florida several times down here. And eventually, after working in Connecticut, I made Florida my permanent home right here in Delray Beach.
Okay. And what was your first gig in Delray?
First gig in Delray. Oh, I had a failure initially.
Is that the way it always starts?
Yeah. I've had a fair share of those, mixed bag when it comes to those things. But I bought a restaurant, and I waited tables actually for a short period of time when I was here, a restaurant that no longer exists. And then I ended up buying a restaurant in the corner of Job Road and Okeechobee Boulevard, out in the western part of West Palm, almost into like Wellington.
Yeah.
And so I bought this restaurant out there, and it was an Italian restaurant, red sauce Italian joint, owned by an accountant who thought he could make a good run as a restaurateur because his mom made good food.
I haven't heard that one before.
And of course, being still young and still really not open to anybody else's ideas and stubborn, I thought I was gonna I took over the restaurant, remodeled it, changed the concept, kept it Italian, but tried to do a much more innovative small plate Italian concept, and it didn't work. It just flat out didn't work. If in retrospect, looking back at it, if I had just done, kept that red sauce American Italian food, which I grew up on, which I really love, I just never wanted to sell it for a living. I probably, just improved upon operations and made the food better, I could probably still be there.
Right.
But I had a mind of my own,
right.
And there was nobody. I didn't take into account the market that I was in, demographic, and I did what I wanted, and I fell flat on my face.
Right. Sometimes you overthink things. No, I've seen that. I've seen that with so many chefs sometimes, and that's why chefs don't necessarily make the best restaurateurs, and sometimes restaurateurs really don't know that much about culinary. They know the demographics, they know the market. Correct. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean? That kind of line. I mean, I worked at Gladstone's where they crushed their numbers. They were like one of the top 10 restaurants in the nation. All they did was grill seafood. That was it.
Yeah.
Don't go outside the box. They made a killer New England clam chowder with no potatoes, and they just grilled fish, and that was it, man. That's all they stuck to it. It was all about their location and where they were, and they had an outside deck where they did a killer, Coronas and stuff like that, a celebrity hangout.
You got to give the people what they want.
That's it.
It really is. Do it well, but give the people what they want. I mean, you can't. I think there's very, very, very few exceptions of where a single restaurant can change the market. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
I mean, you've got and that's why it's a location business. You got to find the location first, and find a good location, and then build a restaurant that makes sense. When it starts turning into passion projects, it's a passion project at the end of the day, and a lot of times it falls short.
On that note, let's kind of not bouncing around, but what do you think about like the proliferation of Italian restaurants in this town? I guess there's a market for it, right? You
There's
got all
a
the
market
Northeasterners
for it.
here.
There really is a market for it. I mean, when Rose's daughter and Elizabeth were being built, you kept seeing them, Delray Raw, and just word around town. Oh my God, another Italian restaurant. Well, I've been to Elizabeth's I think 3 times now. I've been to Rose's daughter 3 times as well. And guess what? There's a market for it.
Right.
And I don't think Tremonti is skipping a beat. I don't really know Sazio, so I'm not sure.
Right.
But the old standbys are still doing well, from what I've gathered. The first time I ate at Elizabeth's, they did 420 something dinners that night. Rose's daughter, you can't fit another person inside there. The only time it's been quiet was I went once for pizza late night. When was it? Tuesday, Wednesday night, 10:30, 11 o'clock. Of course, there weren't many people there.
Right.
But that's what people want.
Right.
And that's the food I grew up on. And as much as I was reluctant to sell it several years ago, and do that type of restaurant, when I think of comfort food, some people think of meat and potatoes, but my comfort food is pizza and chicken parm and meatballs. That's the stuff I grew up eating, and that I love. So I mean, I guess I'm that market because I'll tell you, out of the 3 new places that opened in the past 2 months, 3 months, between the wine room, Elizabeth's, and Rose's daughter, you're going to find me sitting at Rose's daughter in Elizabeth's, and you're not really going to find me at the wine room.
Right.
It's just not for me.
Right. We went there the other day. Bill Bathard had a election kickoff type thing, and it's an interesting space. We didn't really get into dig in on the food or anything like that, but I kind of saw the inside of the space, and I mean that's one of my first jobs was bussing tables at the old Arcade Tap Room back. I mean, way back. Oh yeah, I worked at Arcade Tap Room. I worked at Sunhua Chinese restaurant, which is where Estancia is now. My dad he was the executive chef at La Petite Chalet, which was another restaurant around here. And then the Patio Delray used to be on Atlantic Avenue, and it used to have a roof that opened up.
Patio Delray over on George Bush?
Yeah, but not the same owners.
Okay.
But yeah, so when we moved here, my dad was a chef, my mom was a bartender. Yeah, and then my dad, you know where Reagan's is? Reagan's in Lantana, the Crab Shack.
Oh, yes.
That was my dad's foray into his own space, and it wound up going under. Mom and Dad got broken up. We wound up moving back to New York. So
our restaurant's great.
Yeah, restaurants are awesome. Which, you know what? This is going to be a perfect segue into, like I said, you've been very vocal about your sobriety, 8.5 months. Congratulations. That's not an easy feat. As somebody who has personally gone through that off and on, and I think I went 1.5 years sober when I lived in LA. I can definitely identify, and I just wanted to get your story and kind of find out when you kind of realized, all right, I need to get help, because we were talking about this a little before. So many restaurant people, and I want you to tell that story like what you were talking about with O'Connor's, but so many people in the restaurant business do struggle because, let's face it, we work long hours, we get out late at night, we want to find a way to turn our brains off, or whatever it may be. You want to socialize, you've been waiting on other people, you want to sit down and kind of relax and take a breath, and it's kind of the culture. So if you would just get into that.
It is part of the culture, and I understand it, and I've been part of that culture for years. And I've been, this isn't a recent thing with drugs and alcohol for me. This has been something I've been battling for the better part of the last 10 years, and I never took it seriously because I have amazing willpower, and if I put my mind to something, I can white knuckle anything. I could stay at a job I hated for years, or whatever the case may be. If I put my mind to doing something, I can do it. And my battle with drugs and alcohol has been very similar to that. And I never really quite understood the underlying issues, that it wasn't just drugs and alcohol, it was the mental illness, the depression, and all the things that go along with it. And so I spent years trying to, going through periods where I drank, periods where I didn't drink, trying to just do it my own way, and it didn't work. And and I was always afraid to be honest with people. I don't know why. I was always afraid that that stigma that we talked about earlier, and and it's unfortunate, but the stigma is there. And you could walk out of O'Connor's every single night, tripping, falling into your car, whatever, and people just kind of laugh and be like, oh, look at John go, and he'll be, we'll see him tomorrow. But the day you put, you end up saying, hey, I've got a problem, I'm an alcoholic. All of a sudden, you're put in a different box now.
Right.
And now all of a sudden, they're like, oh, he's got a problem. Well, no shit. I've been falling out of O'Connor's every single night.
Right.
I've had a problem for a long time before I said it. And I think that people are afraid to come out. And, I want to use my platform. I don't know, it might cost me money down the road or whatever the case may be, or it might cost me different opportunities, but I think it's more important to get the message out that it's okay to not be okay.
Right.
And that, there's room for everybody in this business, and that, drug and alcohol and mental issues, need to be addressed in this issue, and we all need to have our place in this business. Doesn't mean that we should be outcasts or we shouldn't work here
right.
in this business. We all have a place here, and I think that I'll use my goal is to use my platform to one create some support for people, be an ear that people can talk to, and hopefully at some point create some localized support groups for people in the restaurant business to be able to just sit around and talk. And maybe some people don't really have a problem, but they think they do. And we just need a more open line of communication, and we need it to be okay.
Yeah.
Because we're losing way too many people. There's people dying from whether it's mental illness and suicide, or drinking themselves to death, ODing on
opioids.
Yeah.
I mean, and our town is noted for that. I mean, This is kind of where one of the big businesses in this town is the rehabs.
Of course.
And people come here to get sober, and a lot of people who come here to get sober wind up working in our restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
I know that from hiring people and dealing with some people. That's part of our culture around here as Delray Beach, and having somebody who's in the management position, I think, can only be a positive. Someone that's going down that road, and someone that's got an ear and a heart to listen to some of these kids that could be going through a lot of pain and not being able to articulate it.
It's terrifying. I realized I had I've known for a long time I had a problem, but this last time right before I went to rehab, I went out to Arizona February 11th.
Right.
And I had no place to go, John. I had no place to live. I was going from couch to couch, spending a couple of weeks with people until I nobody really wants a guy drinking around the block, sleeping on the couch all day and throwing up blood. Wow. That's not everyone's lifelong dream to have that in their living room. Till finally, I made my way onto Blake and Anna Malatesta. I don't know if you know them or not, but Blake's a local chef. I was on their couch the last 3 weeks before I went to rehab. And I was physically and mentally broke. I had never been so low in my life, and I was running. All the avenues were starting to close around me. I had nowhere to go. People were fed up with my bullshit, and I wasn't suicidal, but I had no desire to live, and I didn't care if I drank myself to death. Right. And addiction's really, in a nutshell, kind of the slowest form of suicide, really, because you're essentially killing yourself.
Exactly. I said that
intentionally.
before myself. Yeah, it's
So
what was the moment? Was it somebody telling you, or was it you just finally saying, "Hey, this has to stop"?
I had a lot of friends that were watching after me, and I had several trips to the hospital, and all sorts of things, but there wasn't anything in particular. There wasn't like one thing that was kind of like, you got slapped upside the head and was like, wow, I should go to rehab.
Yeah, I'm never going to drink again. Yeah.
But there was pressure, which though you have to do it for yourself, outside pressure does help get you there.
Right.
It certainly does when people are like, hey, I'm going to take this away from you if you don't get the help that you need. But I realized that I had some gas left in the tank. I still had some things I wanted to do, and that I wasn't fully ready to check out yet.
Right.
And I was like, it took me a week or so to kind of navigate the course of what I was going to do, because I didn't have any money, I had no insurance, nothing, and I did have a friend though, whose company is based here. At the time it was based in Delray. It's based up in West Palm now, but owns some rehabs, some treatment centers out on the West Coast of the country, out in Arizona, and then some up in Washington State. And I remember it was a Saturday morning, and I called him up, And we hadn't spoken in like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years maybe.
Wow.
And we picked up on the second ring. And I was like, Frank, I need help. And he's like, what's wrong? I said, you know, I've just been drinking too much, and I've been hospitalized, and drugs, whatever the case may be. And he's like, do you have any money? I said, nope. He said, do you have any insurance? I said, nope. He's like, all right. He's like, can you commit to 90-something days? And I said, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. He said, all right, you know, Mark Anthony's going to call you in an hour. He said, we'll figure out a flight. When can you get out here? I said, I can leave whenever. So I left Monday morning. He scholarshiped you. I don't remember the exact total. I think it's like $57,000 program. I paid $0.
Wow.
So, you know, when I get out there, you know, you're desperate when you get out there. I mean, you physically feel like shit. Mentally you're broken. But, you know, the physical pain goes away a lot faster than the mental, right? And I was out there, I don't know, 4 or 5 days, and physically, I mean, I didn't feel great, but if I had to go to work, I could have gone.
Right.
And it took me about another week or so while I was out there to get back to rock bottom again. And, you know, because I was sitting out there after 4 or 5 days, like, oh shit, what am I going to do for another 80-something days out here? I feel all right.
Right. You think all the work's done. Yeah, you're like, oh great, I cleaned myself out, I detoxed, and that's really where the real work starts.
And I was in, you know, and I was go to my groups every day, and I did everything I was supposed to do, but I was skating through. And I, you know, they would ask me questions in group, and I would just give bullshit answers. And
right.
We had this one group facilitator out there. He was actually from down here, from Broward County. He was a contract employee, so he'd go out there like 60 days at a time, come home for a few weeks, go back out there. So he happened to be out there the whole time I was there. And I had been in several of his groups already. And the group was, who are you? So we go around the whole room. I was like the second or third to last person to go. And gets to me. And I don't remember what I answered. It was some bullshit answer. And he looks at me. He just shakes his head. He goes, that's not who you are. And I'm like, huh? He's like, let me tell you who the fuck you are. Excuse my language. Can I swear in this?
Yeah, you're allowed.
Okay. And I said, okay. And he goes, you're an arrogant, self-righteous, entitled, dishonest. And he had like 7 or 8 more adjectives and capped it off with asshole. He goes, that's who the fuck you are. And you know, obviously nobody likes to be told those things, right?
Right.
So, anyways, the group ends shortly thereafterwards. Everybody leaves. He's kind of gathering his belongings. I'm still sitting there. So he comes over to me, puts his arm on my shoulder. He's like, ready to do the work now? I was like, I'll do whatever you say. And from that moment on, I just got into work mode. I was like, this is my job for the next 80-something days. Right? I'm going to come here. I'm going to give it everything I have, just like I would be if I was in a restaurant. Because I can't waste this opportunity. This opportunity is not going to come around. Nobody's going to, you'll end up at some state-run facility, which, you know, served their purpose, but you're not going to get the same level of care in a state-run facility that you go to a private facility. And I've got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to literally save my life.
Right.
And from that moment on, I was all about it. And, you know, and it's still, you know, it's easy. It's not hard to be all about it when you're there because it's all encompassing, right?
Right.
You know, everything you do is somewhat recovery related. The real work becomes when you leave, right?
Exactly.
And, you know, I came back home and I didn't know what to expect. I really didn't. I pissed a fair amount of people off before I left. So I didn't really know. I mean, I did to an extent because I had talked to people when I was out there. But I got home and I was embraced. And like, even some people that I owed apologies to, you know, I tried to apologize and they're like, we're just happy you're trying to get yourself better. Like, we don't even want to hear it. Like, no apology necessary. And then that just, you know, one, it made it easy to be home, but it also makes it easy to forget where you came from. Like, wow, I came back and everything's fine now.
Right.
So I really had to dig my heels in and do the work every single day and make sure that I was putting in that effort. Remembering how bad it was those last day, week before I went to rehab, and knowing how I never, ever want to go back there.
Right.
So my most important thing, my goal really is just to, sobriety is not my most important thing in life. my important thing is life is to live a good life and be positive and help people. In order for any of that to be possible, I need to be sober, because if I'm not sober, I can't do any of those things.
Right.
So, and I just got to remember that daily. And if I do, I'm not perfect now. I still say things I shouldn't. There's not a huge filter on what I say all the time.
That's what we love about it. So let me ask you, how did this you did bar brawls when you got back?
I did.
Was that a different dynamic this time around, or how did that work?
To be
bar brawls, if you guys don't know what bar brawls is, it's basically a contest between all the great bartenders here. Jessie Bell won this year.
She did.
And she's an amazing mixologist, craft cocktails. And so they do a contest basically where they pair up bartenders against each other. It's almost like the NCAA basketball tournament. You get brackets and you go through, and eventually two people competed, and Mrs. Bell is the one who won. And actually, we're talking about getting her on here too soon.
You should.
Yeah, I would love to get her on here.
She's the best bartender in Palm Beach County.
For sure.
Of course she needs
and
to be
a new mother, and just just a dynamic individual.
My favorite people.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you could just get into how was that, the bar brawls and being sober this time around and all that good stuff.
It was funny because like I had mentioned, it was weird coming back, right? And some people thought I came back. I might have really lost my mind when I was out there because I planned bar brawls while I was in treatment. So they're like, "Wow, he's going to be real fucked up when he comes back." I mean, who the hell plans a bar? I mean, I'm on the phone, talking to hey, do you want to do this bar competition with me?
Get the gin and the vodka. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I needed that when I came back. I really did, and I didn't know until the end of bar brawls, because this started before I went to treatment, and Amy and Annie, the owners here, I was going through a bad place, and they knew that bar brawls made me happy, and they knew that it would give me some focus and give me something to do. So we started planning it before I went to treatment, and then things got really bad, and I went to treatment, and I remember calling them a couple of days before I went, and I said, "Listen, I'll be back to do bar brawls, blah blah blah." And listen, people will tell you anything when you're on your way to treatment, just to make sure that you still go.
Right. Yeah.
So, after my head cleared up, I really didn't think that I just and I wasn't mad about it. I just assumed that they would been just told me that just so it wasn't something that would prevent me from going.
Right.
So I'm there a month. I call Amy up, and I was like, "So when are you going to do bar brawls?" She's like, "Well, we're waiting on you." And I'm like, "Huh?" I'm like, "She might be crazier than me." But I didn't really put a whole lot of thought into it until the end of it, about what it really meant to me to be able to do it. And it's a lot of work. I mean, it's not all fun. But I needed something to make me feel like I was back in the community.
Right. And
one, the community embraced me. And I'm not always the easiest to deal with. I can be difficult. I understand that. It allowed me to have fun, and it allowed me to once again bring the community together. But also it was I needed something. I needed to jumpstart when I got back.
Right.
And that was the way bar brawls is structured. It takes about 10-15 hours a week out of your time. Plus the 2 hours or 3 hours that the event goes on. And I didn't want to jump back into a whole bunch of work right away because I needed to, maintain that focus on myself. So, kind of all the stars aligned for it, and it was an opportunity for me to be back, to reacclimate myself with the community, to see all my friends on a weekly basis, which is really the best part about it, and give bartenders the opportunity to showcase what they do and to make a name for themselves that while they're not technically under the umbrella of whatever restaurant they're working for. And I think that it did a lot of that for people.
Right.
And Jessie, I couldn't have been any happier. I mean, Jessie's a very good friend of mine. I don't have a horse in the race, but I can say it now because I'm retiring from bar brawls. I always hoped all along. I was like, it'd be nice if she wins, but I have no part in that. I don't judge it. So it was, it really accomplished a lot, not just for me, not just for me personally, but really for the community. I think it really, got everybody together, and kind of shown how far we've grown in the last 4 years since the first BREWS in 2015.
Wow. Yeah. So that's awesome. Yeah, Jessie. When I worked with her for a little while, her knowledge and just her passion for cocktails was evident, and yeah, she's definitely the real deal when it comes to being a craft cocktail bartender, well, without a doubt.
One of the things that when I look for a bartender, right, a lot of the young bartenders now, all they're concerned about is what makes it into the glass. And I think we've had some between you and Paul, and I've seen some stuff on the internet about back when you used to bartender when I got into the business, and it was it was a lot different game than it is
Woo-woos
now.
and fuzzy navels.
Yeah.
I remember when someone said a Cosmo, I'm like, 4 ingredients? I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Only thing I make with
Here's
4
a gin and
ingredients on
tonic.
Long
Enjoy
Island,
it.
and grab every white liquor and.
And she kind of transcends a lot of that, because all these bartenders are just worried about stuff, worried about one, what goes into the glass, which is important. And two, a lot of them are just really worried about what, I think the phrase is Instagrammable. Right. And, Jessie makes a great cocktail, but she's the whole package, right? So she's got the hospitality aspect of it. She understands food, she understands beverage. And, she kind of gets put in, at least here in Palm Beach County, in my book anyways, on like a little platform by herself. It's something that, some of the young kids, because she's not one of the young kids anymore now that she's a mom.
Right.
Something to strive for, anyways, and I think it's a good example for some of the younger ones that are just cracking into the business, just getting behind the bar for the first time, and realizing that this business is all about hospitality. That's it. That's the driving force in this business. Whether you're serving cocktail, great cocktails, whether you're serving cheap beer, whether you're serving hamburgers, hot dogs, caviar, lobster, it all comes down to hospitality.
Right. You can serve mediocre food, and if your service is over the top, you'll do well. Mm-hmm. But if you have the best food in the world and it's not being served with hospitality, or you're not hitting it when it comes to service, you're going to lose those people.
Yeah, proof's in the pudding on that one.
So real quick, I want to talk to you about what you think is going to happen in Delray Beach in the next couple of years. I know you're involved in a pretty exciting project. Maybe tell us a little more about that, and maybe what you love about what's happening in Delray, and maybe things that you don't love so much about Delray. The floor is yours.
All right, so hasn't it been the last 20 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it's all about, man. I didn't know all this stuff about you, man. This is great.
So I'm involved in a couple of different things now. One thing that I wanted to do, when I got back from Arizona, was really be involved more locally. I had spent the last couple of years traveling all over the place, and as much as I enjoyed it, this is my home. This is where my heart is. I always thought my heart was in Providence, but this really is now truly my home here in South Florida. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. Obviously BREWS kind of kept me here for the summer, but it's an 11-week sprint there. And I called Dennis Max when I got back in. He's working with Craig Menon on the food hall and the Ray Hotel that's being built in Pineapple Grove. And Dennis and I have known each other for 5 years now, I think. And I've always seen a lot of value in Dennis because he doesn't watch Facebook or YouTube, so I don't have to worry about it. He's kind of like Yoda, right?
Yeah.
He's like been there, done that. Bought the T-shirt type of figure. And I've always cherished the fact that I could always just call him up and be like, hey, like, this is weird for me, like, and in a very kind of macro type of way, he could talk me through a lot of situations, at least in terms of restaurants. So I gave him a buzz when I came back, and I went to his office, and we sat and we talked, and he's like, how can we get you involved in the food hall? And I said, it took us a few meetings to really figure it out. So now really I'm, as I think Craig said today, I'm the chief talent scout. So I kind of work both ends of it. I find, I look for concepts for them.
Right.
And then if it makes sense, I work with the operator to kind of get them to the point of opening. So
Gotcha.
in terms of projections, working on the menu with them, how it's going to look, and just kind of, essentially I'm a liaison between the ownership group and then the individual operators.
So you're basically assessing the people that are coming in and saying, okay, they got a good concept, maybe they don't have the knowledge of the numbers that they may need to have, or maybe they got a good grasp on the numbers, but they don't have basically you're just trying to work there to where their levels are, where you think they're going to have the best chance of success.
True, and also I'm around, right? I'm present, so I'm out and about every single day. So I come across, I travel in different circles that Dennis does and Craig does. So, I come across different people doing cool stuff that they might never, come across.
Okay,
right?
so you're searching.
I get, sometimes some unknown people a seat at the table, which they would have never probably been able to get on their own.
Right.
So it's been a lot of fun. I've never done anything like this. So I'm working with them on that. And, here, Death and Glory, a building both you and I have a fair amount of history with.
Yeah. Such a great space. It's so great to see you guys can see, this is Halloween, Christmas, they deck it out. This is probably one of the most original spaces in Delray, if not all of South Florida, as far as the way it looks. And they've done a great job here with the concept that they brought, which was the craft cocktail and craft food. This is what we always expected here, what they wanted here.
And they've done such a good job here with it. They've gone out on a limb. They've done these pop-ups. They've done Halloween pop-up. They did, this Christmas will be the third year they're doing the Christmas pop-up. And combined with really a lot of great work on their end, and then the timing right for it. And I think the last couple of there were a lot of reasons for, I think, especially because I was there through it all at Max's Social. I was to pretty much to the end. There were a lot of reasons of why that didn't work.
Yeah.
But part of it was the timing. Like, it just wasn't quite right for the whole cocktail movement. And we screwed up a lot of things too. But
I think on that note, because I know you and I both share a lot of that, and we could talk off camera about a lot of it too. What I loved about the way that these guys came in here was they named it Death or Glory, which turned off about half of the old guard of Delray. And you know what they did when that happened? They went, fine, don't come in. And I still know people who won't come near this place that I'm friends with that are, I don't see the old guard of Delray, but you know what? That's not the audience.
No.
And they're not trying to please everybody.
Well, they know their audience.
Yeah.
And that's, and I was one, not that I'm part of the old guard, but when I heard what they were going to name it, I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I would name a restaurant that. But that being said, they know their audience.
Exactly.
And
they're not dipping their toes in both. It's like they took a full plunge into one end of the pool, and I respect them for that. It's absolutely.
It's worked. It's flourishing. It's it just keeps getting better and better. On all aspects, on all fronts for them. So.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good stuff. So, where are we going to see you? You're going to be at the food hall coming up soon, or when's that going to be opening?
Well, the food hall will probably, based on a meeting this morning, the food hall will be open January 2021, the absolute latest February.
All right.
So, unlike a lot of things in Florida, they're digging the basement, and not a whole lot of basements in Florida.
No.
And they tried explaining it to me, and there's certain things I understand, and certain things I don't. Construction, handiwork, any of that shit, I don't really get all that much. But in just simpler terms, it's like building a swimming pool.
Right.
So they're building a basement, they're digging the basement, filling in the concrete, and then they're going to build the first hall. They can start working on the interior of the first hall while they build the second, third, and fourth, which is just a parking garage.
Right.
And not knowing much about construction, building a parking garage is pretty easy from what I've been told.
Okay.
So we're looking, beginning of the food hall should be open January, February 2021.
Awesome. Well, I was on the SPRAB board when we approved the plans, and if you get a chance, go online. You can find the plans. It's going to be amazing. The way it's going to be like two floors, but one of the floors is going to be like a mezzanine type setup.
And that's where the bar will be. The full bar will be on the mezzanine.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's going to be exciting.
32 vendors on the first floor. Some real dynamic vendors. There'll be a great retail and market aspect to it. So, especially for the people that live downtown, you'll be able to go there and buy stuff to take home with you. Not only prepared foods, but grocery type items too. So this isn't necessarily set in stone, but for example, like the burger person, you'll probably be able to buy like a half pound or a pound of their ground meat, so you can take it home and barbecue with it. And I think that's going to be, it's not just, that's why the name is Delray Market. It's really, they really want to play in the market aspect of it rather than just be a food hall where you go and you get your plate of food and you eat it and you're on your way.
Right.
It's going to be much more than a tourist trap.
And that makes sense because, I mean, in that area, you've got condos
Mhm.
where people will be cooking at home. You've got the beach is close.
Yep.
You have people that might be staying at the hotel, but maybe they plan on going down to the beach. They want to barbecue or
Mhm.
whatever. So, yeah, that really looks exciting, man. We're looking forward to it. I want to welcome you back officially.
Well, thank you. I'm
Thank
glad
you so
to
much
be
for
back.
telling your story.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You know, if this helped anybody out there, that'd be great. And I'm sure you're available to help people or talk to people that maybe
I'm easy
going
to
through
find.
it. You're easy to find. Bob's always around. We bumped into you last time at Rose's daughter.
Yes.
And he's always out trying new food. Anytime I go to a restaurant and I see Bob, if I mention it, he's already been there. He already knows everybody. So you'll see him around town. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And we'll see you around. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun.